Have you ever moved somewhere new and felt watched? Caleb Drayton thought moving to a quiet countryside home would bring him peace. But on his first night, he learned something lives in those woods, something that only comes out after dark. Caleb Drayton was tired, bone tired. The drive from the city to this quiet countryside had taken almost 6 hours, and his old pickup was still loaded with boxes. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the worn wooden fence that stretched across his backyard. Beyond that fence stood a wall of trees, thick, dark, and endless. "This is it," he muttered, stepping out onto the grass. The air smelled different here, sharp and earthy, almost too fresh after years of city smog. He walked slowly toward the fence, just wanting to take in his new property. That's when he noticed it. Deep claw marks, carved straight into the old wood. For long grooves, uneven and jagged, like something had tried to climb over, or tear its way in. Caleb crouched down, running his fingers over the grooves. The wood wasn't just scratched, it was shredded, splintered like it had been done with force. He laughed nervously to himself. Must have been a raccoon, or a bear maybe. But bears didn't usually leave marks this low, and the size, it didn't feel right. He shook it off and went back inside, telling himself he was overthinking. New places always felt strange at first, right? But as darkness fell and the last bit of sunlight disappeared behind the tree line, Caleb stood at his window, staring out at the yard. The trees looked different now, darker, heavier, as if they were leaning closer. For just a second he thought he saw movement, a shadow slipping between the trees. But when he blinked, it was gone. Caleb closed the curtains, locked the door, and told himself one thing. Tomorrow will feel normal. He was wrong. Caleb lay on his bed, the glow from his phone screen casting faint light across the room. He'd spent hours unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and trying to make this old house feel like home. Now it was well past midnight, and the silence outside was almost unnatural. He was about to put the phone down when it came. Scrar-ape. A low dragging sound. Faint at first, then louder. It wasn't coming from inside the house. No, it was outside. In the backyard. Caleb froze, listening. The sound repeated. Scrar-ape drags Scrar-ape. Like something heavy being pulled across the ground. He sat up slowly, his heart beating faster with each second. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a branch falling. This was deliberate. Rhythmic. Caleb slipped out of bed, bare feet pressing against the cold floor, and walked toward the window that overlooked the backyard. The curtains were thin, and the darkness beyond felt like an ocean. He pulled the fabric aside just a little. The yard was empty, silent. For a moment, he let out the breath he didn't know he was holding. But then he saw it. 2 glowing spots deep within the tree line. Eyes. 2 faint, pale lights hovering in the darkness, locked on him. Caleb's throat went dry. He stood there, frozen, barely breathing. Then blinked, they were gone. The trees swayed slightly in the breeze as if mocking him. No sound now. No movement. Caleb let the curtain fall back into place and stepped away from the window, his pulse still racing. He laughed nervously to himself. Deer. Probably a deer, he whispered, though even he didn't believe it. He checked the locks on the back door twice, then turned off the light and climbed back into bed, pulling the blanket to his chin. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something out there had been watching him, waiting. And deep in the woods, unseen, something moved again. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window as Caleb brewed his first cup of coffee in the new house. The night had been long, and the memory of those glowing eyes still lingered in his mind. He tried to shake it off. Maybe it really was a deer. After breakfast, he decided to meet his neighbors. Out here, everyone seemed to know each other, and he figured a friendly introduction couldn't hurt. The nearest house was about a 5-minute walk down the dirt road. It was an old farmhouse with peeling paint and a sagging porch. An elderly man sat in a wooden chair, slowly rocking back and forth, a pipe clenched between his teeth. Caleb stepped up. "Morning," he said with a polite smile. "Name's Caleb Drayton. Just moved in up the road." The old man's cloudy gray eyes lifted to him. His face was wrinkled, weathered by years of sun and worry. "You moved into the Hendricks place," he said flatly. "Yeah," Caleb chuckled nervously. "Big house. Big yard. Kinda creepy at night though." The man stopped rocking. His hand, which had been steady on the armrest, tightened slightly. "What do you mean creepy?" he asked, voice low and cautious. Caleb shrugged. "Probably nothing. Just weird sounds. Like something dragging. And I thought I saw eyes in the woods." The old man's face drained of color. His eyes darted toward the tree line beyond Caleb, then back to him. "Lock your doors," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And your windows. At night, stay inside. No matter what you hear." Caleb frowned. "What are you talking about? Is it some kind of animal?" The man leaned closer, his voice trembling now. "No animal. Just don't go outside when it calls. Don't even look." Caleb forced a laugh, trying to hide the chill creeping up his spine. "All right, sure. I'll keep that in mind." But as he walked back home, the old man's words replayed in his head. "Stay inside. No matter what you hear." It didn't feel like advice. It felt like a warning. By late afternoon, Caleb had almost managed to convince himself that the old man was just superstitious. Rural folks always had strange warnings, right? That's what he kept telling himself as he swept the kitchen floor and unpacked the last of the dishes. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Nova. "Almost there. 10 minutes." His younger sister had insisted on visiting for a few days. Worried he'd get bored out here alone. Caleb didn't mind the company, especially after last night. When her little blue hatchback pulled into the driveway, he stepped out onto the porch with a smile. Nova hopped out, grinning, her dark hair tied in a messy bun. "Wow, Caleb," she said, looking around. "This place is huge. And creepy." "Thanks for the honesty," Caleb laughed. He helped her with her bag, and they headed inside. By evening, the siblings were curled up on the couch with pizza boxes on the coffee table, an old horror movie playing on the TV. Nova teased him about moving to a serial killer's dream house, and Caleb rolled his eyes. For the first time since arriving, he felt almost relaxed. Until it happened. Nova froze mid-bite. "Caleb, look." The sliding glass door at the back of the living room, the one facing the yard, was fogging up from the outside. Long, hazy streaks forming as if someone was breathing against the glass. Caleb's blood ran cold. He grabbed the flashlight and slowly approached the door, his heart pounding in his ears. He swung the light across the yard. Nothing. Just the trees, standing still in the night breeze. He pressed his hand against the glass. It was ice cold. Too cold. "Probably the temperature," he muttered, though his voice sounded shaky even to himself. Nova stared at him. "Yeah? Then why does it look like fingerprints?" Caleb looked closer, and sure enough, faint handprints were smeared in the condensation, as if someone had pressed their palms against the glass. But there was no one outside. At least, not anymore. The house had gone quiet. Too quiet. It was almost 3 a.m. when Nova opened her eyes. At first, she wasn't sure what had woken her. The room was dim, lit only by a sliver of moonlight slipping through the curtains. Caleb was asleep down the hall. Everything should have been peaceful. Then she heard it. A whisper. Soft. Low. Almost like the wind. Except the wind doesn't say your name. Nova. Her heart stopped. She sat up slowly, straining to hear. Silence. Then there it was again. Closer this time. Nova, come outside. Her throat tightened. With trembling fingers, she reached for her phone on the nightstand, but her eyes drifted to the window. She didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at her not to, but she did. She pulled the curtain back an inch and froze. Out by the tree line stood a tall, unnatural silhouette. Its limbs were too long, its body stretched and bent in ways that didn't look human. It stood motionless, facing the house. The faint moonlight revealed a pale, colorless face, except it wasn't really a face. No eyes. No mouth. Just a smooth shape, tilting slightly like it was curious. Nova's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then the head tilted further, almost touching its shoulder, like a bird studying prey. That broke her. She stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp with a loud crash. The sound tore through the silence. Caleb's voice came from the hall. Nova. What happened? She couldn't answer. She pointed at the window, shaking violently. Caleb ran in, grabbing the curtain and yanking it open. The yard was empty. Nova, he said softly, trying to calm her down. There's nothing there. But she couldn't stop staring at the trees. Because she knew what she saw. Something was out there. Something that knew her name. And it was getting closer. Caleb didn't sleep the rest of the night. He stayed in the living room with a baseball bat across his lap, his eyes darting toward the sliding glass door every few minutes. Nova sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, trembling. By morning, she finally whispered, "You believe me now, don't you?" Caleb nodded slowly. "Something's out there. But I'm gonna find out what." That afternoon, he dug through old boxes in the garage until he found what he was looking for. A motion sensor trail camera he'd bought years ago for a camping trip. It was cheap, but it worked. He tested the batteries, strapped it to the fence post facing the tree line, and made sure the angle covered the entire backyard. "If something comes near the fence," he said, tightening the strap, "we'll know." Nova didn't look convinced. "What if it comes closer?" Caleb forced a smile. "Then I'll be ready." That night, they sat in the living room with the lights off, listening. The woods outside were silent at first. Too silent. Even the crickets had stopped. Then came the sound. Snap. Crunch. Snap. Branches breaking. Heavy steps moving just beyond the trees. Nova's nails dug into the couch cushion. "Caleb." "Quiet," he whispered, gripping the flashlight. The sound grew closer. The bushes rustled. The air felt heavier, colder. Then click. The faint flash of the trail camera outside. Something had triggered it. Caleb grabbed his phone and pulled up the live feed. Static. The image was warped, lines of white noise crawling across the screen. Then, for just a split second, a shape appeared, tall, hunched, with limbs that bent wrong. And then the screen went black. The camera stopped working. Nova gasped as something slammed against the fence outside. The wood groaned, creaking like it might break. Caleb dropped the phone and grabbed the bat. "Stay inside," he told her, though his voice shook. The noise stopped. Total silence. Then a low whisper from the yard. "Caleb." The whisper hung in the air like a chill. Caleb's grip on the bat tightened, his knuckles turning white. Nova stared at him, wide-eyed, her lips trembling. "Caleb," she whispered. "It knows your name." He didn't answer. He couldn't. The sound outside shifted, slow, deliberate footsteps crunching against the frosty grass. One step. Two. Then silence. The living room felt like a cage. Caleb crept toward the sliding glass door, every nerve in his body screaming at him not to look. But he had to. He had to see. He shone the flashlight through the glass, the beam cutting across the yard. At first, nothing. Just the pale fence, the shadowed trees. Then he saw it. A hand. Pressed against the glass. It was long, unnaturally thin. The skin pale as bone and stretched too tight over the knuckles. Black claws curled against the glass, screeching lightly as they slid downward, leaving faint streaks behind. Caleb stumbled back, almost dropping the light. Nova gasped, covering her mouth. Then came the sound of the gate swinging open. It slammed against the fence post with a metallic clang. Caleb's heart pounded. He ran to the door and yanked the curtain shut, locking the sliding latch. Then he killed the lights, pulling Nova to the floor with him. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The house went still. They could hear footsteps now, inside the yard. Slow. Dragging. Getting closer to the door again. Caleb raised the bat, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Then silence. They waited. 10 seconds. 20. The silence was worse than the sound. Nova leaned toward him, whispering so faintly he almost didn't hear it. Where did it go?" And then a soft tap at the glass. One tap. Another. And then the voice. "Nova." By morning, Caleb couldn't take it anymore. He hadn't slept a second. Nova sat on the couch, pale and silent, still wrapped in the same blanket as last night. The whispers, the hand on the glass, none of it felt real, but the streaks on the sliding door were still there. Long, greasy smears where those claws had traced down the glass. Caleb grabbed his keys. "Stay here," he told Nova. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice breaking. "To get answers." He drove fast down the dirt road to Zeke Ward's place. The old farmhouse looked even more crooked in daylight, its shutters hanging by rusted hinges. Zeke was outside, stacking firewood with trembling hands. Caleb slammed his truck door and stormed up the path. "You knew something was out there," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You didn't just warn me, you knew." Zeke looked up slowly. His eyes were bloodshot, heavy with something worse than fear, resignation. "You saw it," he said flatly. It wasn't a question. Caleb clenched his fists. "What is it? Some animal? A sick joke? Tell me." Zeke's hands trembled as he set the last log down. "It's not an animal. It's older than these woods. We call it the Hollow Man." Caleb stared at him. "What the hell does that mean?" Zeke stepped closer, lowering his voice like the trees might be listening. "It doesn't have a face of its own. It wears skins. Animals. People. It can sound like anyone. It can look like anyone. Once it sees you. Once it knows your name." He paused, swallowing hard. "It doesn't stop." Caleb felt his stomach turn to ice. "You're telling me it's after us? Why?" "Because you saw it," Zeke whispered. "You looked back." Caleb backed away slowly. His hands were shaking now. Behind him, the trees swayed gently in the breeze. And from somewhere deep within the woods, so faint it could have been the wind, came a voice. "Caleb." Night fell like a heavy curtain, smothering the house in blackness. Caleb had locked every door, every window, and shoved furniture against the sliding glass door. The baseball bat never left his hands. Nova sat in the corner, knees to her chest, clutching her phone even though there was no signal. The silence outside was crushing, so deep that every creak of the old house sounded like a gunshot. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And went out. "Caleb." Nova's voice cracked in the dark. "Stay calm," he whispered, fumbling for the flashlight. His hands shook so hard the beam jerked wildly across the walls, throwing shadows that looked like moving shapes. Then came the sound. A soft, deliberate click. Like a latch. From the back door. "No," Caleb muttered, rushing to check the barricade. It was still in place. The door was locked. Another click. This time from the kitchen. Then the sound of something dragging across the floorboards. Nova's breath hitched. It's inside. The air grew heavy, thick, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Caleb raised the flashlight toward the hallway. The beam quivered as he moved forward, bat clenched in his other hand. Then he saw it. At first, it looked like a man crawling on all fours at the far end of the hall. But as the light swept over it, the truth froze Caleb's blood. Its limbs were too long, joints bending the wrong way. Skin stretched pale and thin like wet paper. Its head slowly turned toward him. Too slowly. There was no face. Just smooth skin where eyes and a mouth should be. And then, as if skin peeled open from the inside, a smile appeared. Wide. Wrong. Full of black teeth. The thing let out a sound, low and broken, like laughter through shattered glass, and scuttled forward at impossible speed. Nova. Run. Caleb shouted, swinging the bat as the light flickered. But the bat never hit. The flashlight fell, spinning across the floor. And then there was only darkness. The house was silent. Caleb groaned as he came to, his head throbbing. The bat was gone. The flashlight lay on its side, casting a weak beam across the floorboards. Nova was nowhere in sight. Nova? His voice was hoarse, shaky. No answer. He staggered to his feet, calling again. Nova. A sound drifted from the hallway, a soft humming, a tune he recognized. His mother used to hum it when they were kids. Nova had picked it up from her. Relief flooded him for a second, until he remembered Zeke's words. It can sound like anyone. The humming grew louder, closer. Caleb turned toward the sound, gripping the edge of a chair like it was a weapon. Nova, he whispered. From the darkness at the end of the hall, she stepped out. At least it looked like her. Same hair, same face. She smiled, soft and sweet. Caleb, she said gently. It's okay. I'm fine. But her voice, there was something off. Too calm. Too perfect. Then she tilted her head. Too far. The bones in her neck crackled like breaking sticks. Why did you lock me out? She whispered, her voice doubling. Two tones overlapping, one low, one high. Caleb stumbled back. His breath came in sharp bursts. You're not her. The smile split wider, tearing the skin at the corners. Black teeth gleamed in the dim light. Then it dropped to all fours. And charged. Caleb spun and bolted for the front door. He yanked it open and tore into the night, bare feet slamming against cold dirt. He didn't stop. Not when branches whipped his face. Not when he heard the thing behind him. Laughter like glass grinding on metal. He ran until his lungs burned. Until his legs nearly gave out. He didn't look back. He couldn't. By sunrise, Caleb reached the edge of town. People found him on the roadside, barefoot, bleeding, muttering one word over and over. Nova. They never found her. And when Caleb tried to go back with the sheriff that day, his house was gone. Nothing but empty woods where it stood. But sometimes, late at night, people say they hear humming out there. And if you listen long enough, it starts calling your name.